Buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this new event, Roche Builders, the program of innovation from Roche Group. Today is a very special edition. It's a hybrid version. We are streaming the event, and we are also attending in person in Talent Garden, one of our organizing partners for the event. The event will be fully devoted to artificial intelligence, which has the potential to revolutionize healthcare and therapies. The title of the event, so the AI Effect, Building AI Solution Together, has been co-defined with a number of partners that you can read at the back on the slide of my left-hand side. A big round of applause for the great collaborations from all of our partners for the co-creation purposes. Artificial intelligence has indeed the power to revolutionize healthcare and therapies, and it's proving to be effective in many different aspects and perspectives. And healthcare actually is kind of lagging behind when it comes to applying such potential. Some estimates are saying that the real impact will become tangible over the next decade, between 6-8 years down the line, and it will be under two different perspectives. On the one side, it will assist patients when it comes to the operational flows, both in the hospital as well as in the outpatient setting, and also when it comes to the decision-making from a clinician standpoint. Of course, still the last word will be the one of man, will be the one of the clinician, but still it will support them by developing the best algorithms when it comes to defining on the best therapies. So, this means that artificial intelligence is a reality already, and I am so very pleased on behalf of the Roche Group to introduce our agenda and introduce also all of our speakers. They will talk to us around such innovation and how the approach will be taken, and how will this all unfold when it comes to speed up the application of the potential that I mentioned a moment ago. And speaking through skills and competencies, actually I'd love to welcome Federica Draghi, Investment Director from Genextra, Irene Simone from Fondazione Policlinico Gemelli in Rome, co-founder of Zero Impact. I will leave a minute to you two. Irene, do you want to start? Thank you, Alice. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy and honored to be here today. With Alfredo Cesari, I've been engaged in digital health and open innovation at the Policlinico Gemelli. I'm also co-founder and CEO of a startup that deals with the circular economy. On both topics, I've had this opportunity to actually follow some projects on AI-based, and bringing around the table stakeholders coming from many different skills and competencies, still sharing the same common goal. It's been a great challenge, and the greatest challenge has been to harmonize the language, find a way to best work together and reaching out to the target. I think the event today is a very big moment for us to speak with one another, and look forward to hear from our speakers today. Thank you. Thank you, Irene. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'd love to welcome everyone, and soon I will welcome our panelists as well. Well, for the past 15 years, I've been involved in life science venture capital investment, and I have invested so far early-stage startups developing new drugs, new medical devices, or diagnostic devices. Well, I have to say that we've realized that you cannot run away from AI when it comes to develop new technologies. And I am so very happy, glad that I'm here today. I look forward to hearing from our panelists today. Thank you.
Grazie. Il palco direttamente a Federica.
We're leaving the floor to Federica, and have a productive afternoon, everyone. So I would love to welcome on stage our first speaker. Let's talk concretely about AI in healthcare. So, Mr. De Cicco, President and Managing Director from Roche Italia, Luciano Ravera, Managing Director, RCCS Humanitas,
San Pio X.
San Pio X.
E poi abbiamo in collegamento.
I'm also welcoming his remotely connected Professor Scambia, Scientific Director from the University Hospital Policlinico Gemelli in Rome.
Buon pomeriggio, professore.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Mi sentite?
La sentiamo adesso, lei riesce a sentirci?
Sì, molto bene.
Can you hear me?
Benvenuto.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Good afternoon and welcome to all of you. So, as I have anticipated, there's a lot going on within the AI industry right now. It is enough perhaps to mention a number, that is the amount that's been invested in venture capital in 2020 by the top 50 companies, AI companies, $8.5 billion investment. And such turmoil, let's say, has actually invited around the table insurance companies, pharma companies, companies developing medical devices, all together, all around the same table, as well as the public and private sector. So we're so very lucky today that we can actually talk through this topic with representatives from the industry itself, as well as from healthcare institute, both private and public. I'd love to ask my first question to Mr. De Cicco. And my question is, why is that pharma companies actually talking through artificial intelligence? Well, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to address the audience, so let me rotate a bit. I'd love to start by a few remarks. Actually, AI is not something that I would call as futuristic, something that is so far away from our current scenario. It is actually something that we have a hands-on with nowadays already. And perhaps one of the industry where we may best understand the potential of the millions of pieces of data which is being processed on a common ground is indeed the pharma industry. And I think this very short remark is significant. And let me tell you why. Well, because thank you to the transformation of the pharma industry as a whole, Roche and Roche Italia more specifically has decided to actually undertake a kind of a different journey from a company that traditionally would make innovation available to patients and clinicians through their therapies and drugs. Well, actually, we believe that time has come for us to actually make a leap forward, a quality leap forward. We want to be recognized healthcare providers. This means that on top of providing high-quality innovation, on top of that, we also want to provide the service and the solutions that may help either the patient and the doctor. And actually, this all processing of services and solutions, actually, they go through the support of AI, the support that AI may deliver. So something that somehow can actually fulfill the unmet needs of our stakeholders and transform ideas and needs in something that becomes very tangible, very hands-on. And I know that later on in the afternoon will make some practical examples of what I'm saying. But this is what I wanted to start it from. So it is very much the nature of a pharma company forward-looking into the third millennia. This is how we want to welcome AI. And let me conclude with an important topic. There's a primary commodity that you cannot purchase, that you cannot buy, and that is time. Time is crucial, and time is crucial, especially for clinicians. So if we're able, through services and solutions, if we're able to return some time to clinicians and physicians so that they can deliver that time to their patients, well, that would be a great success. So thanks to artificial intelligence, we're kind of facilitating, perhaps alleviating some of the burden of clinicians to some extent, because they've been greatly engaged in bureaucracy lately. If they can now rely upon algorithms, it means that we can set some time free and make resources available. This is also AI, and this is also, it means to be close to our stakeholders. So not just technology supporting research, but also supporting healthcare processes, and more broadly speaking, right? Yes, indeed. And of course, we should perhaps focus on research, because if you consider a rare disease, for instance, we do have some 2 million patients and 7,000 rare diseases currently existing. And through algorithms, actually, we may seek for solutions to help these patients more effectively. Yes, and I'm sure we'll hear about some examples later on in the afternoon. Thank you, Mr. De Cicco. I would love to now ask the following question to Professor Scambia. So, what is the role of AI in Policlinico Gemelli, and where is it that you're still making your research? Well, thank you. I wanted to rely on some slides, but actually I've decided to give up my slides. But I will answer straightforward your question. Policlinico Gemelli is a large research-based hospital. If you consider oncology only, we're talking through 50,000 patients every year on a yearly basis. So this means that the moment this hospital becomes a research hospital working and implementing precision medicine, well, it means that it will upload big data, millions of pieces of data that, of course, can only be processed through AI. And that is indeed what we worked on. We worked on predicting outcome of a COVID patient presenting at the emergency department, trying to understand how we should treat those patients that very moment they were presenting in the emergency department. And also, of course, analyzing such big data being processed, it will become crucial for us. And this is why, actually, we have developed a facility within our tech park at the Policlinico Gemelli. And and you know that when it comes to oncology treatment, we are still seeking and trying to research more into the best diagnostic, the best exams that we should submit our patients for breast cancer as well as for ovarian cancer. But it is not always easy to predict that in advance. And through AI, we're currently able to decide who are the best candidates for that very screening for breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So we have started to invest in AI, and this is what we want to carry on doing.
Grazie professore, interessantissimo. Quindi
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting indeed.
promesse in
And
ambito diagnostico.
we're looking forward to
Invece farei la stessa
hearing more
domanda
about
per
it. So from
dottor
a
Ravera,
prognostic
per
viewpoint,
quanto
the same
riguarda
question to Dr. Ravera. What about
Grazie
Humanitas?
dell'invito.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. I do believe that we can also tell a story that is actually similar to that of the Gemelli Hospital. Well, some times ago, in 2014, we started with the so-called digital patient history, and actually that proved to be a very effective tool to improve the quality of treatment from a clinical viewpoint. So we decided to actually better manage the data of our patients, and in the years we understood that managing patients within the hospital but also outside the hospital, because everybody is nowadays focusing on the patient journey, and actually we need now to keep patients be monitored in time. This is our challenge. Think about oncological patients, for example. So we need to be able to monitor them properly. So by focusing on this, so to speak, journey, we help the patient out in terms of administrative tasks, but also in terms of outcomes. So we started with the Art Center some years ago, and now it's 30 people there in this AI center working with the researchers and clinicians on treatment, and we have several projects underway that all try and improve the diagnostic section of the care. Also, we are trying and improving our treatment at hospital level. And also, in the long run, we want to be able to keep connected with our patients. So we want our patients to be connected to us. So we are moving towards that idea of the virtual hospital. Now, of course, you'll need some direction so that all of this works properly from the beginning to an end. But we do have interesting projects like in the endoscopy area and also in hematological diseases. We do have another project that has been financed by the European Union, trying and building a data platform that will allow us to better treat hematological patients. So we'll be carrying out punctual projects within the hospital and also carrying out international projects at the same time. So we do have a lot of work underway indeed. Well, something concrete, I would say. And what about, a glimpse into the future? Well, the very interesting project with Roche is certainly something we are proud of. So we are working on the patient-reported measurements. So again, trying and keeping patients monitored through objective observations on the part of the patient. Because I feel that one of the main paths for the future will be this opportunity to sort of digitalize and keep this treatment path of the patient under control. Another interesting area for improvement is the operating theatre part. thinking about the possible help of images, big data, and AI. With the help of all of this, we will help our surgeons to work better. Again, we will never think about replacing the surgeons, but we will help them out in a very important way. So, pathology and diagnostics. So we do see a lot of interesting opportunities. Thank you very much to Dr. Ravera. While you were talking, you were also mentioning all of the innovations, but where is this innovation going? So where are we heading to in terms of innovation? To you, Dr. De Cicco. This Roche Health Build project, and in terms of scouting new realities in the AI field, what have you learned with this project? Well, I feel that if we have come to the third, fourth edition of Health Builders, this means that actually things are working properly, and it all starts from listening to the needs of our stakeholders. We then gather all the smartest ideas, but then we need someone that would process out the needs that we highlight and find solution for these needs. So, if we have to take stock of what we have achieved, well, we're satisfied of what we have achieved in time. It all started as an experiment, but then it became a very important moment for all of us. This is a time when Roche opened up its doors to innovation, to young researchers. These young researchers have brought in interesting solutions that were then implemented by us, making these solutions available to physicians and doctors. So a couple of examples. Remote monitoring of patients, the possibility now that we have to monitor oncological patients at home without having to having patients needing to come to hospitals for such monitoring. This was really a breakthrough solution. And then think about also cystic fibrosis. This is another area where we managed to find solutions to monitor patients remotely. And this means providing a change in the life of the patient. So when I talk about the drug and the solution, this is what I mean. So I feel that this is the right moment to put all our assets and expertise available. But then it's important for those listening to us to understand what opportunities are there in terms of collaborating together. We're just at the beginning of this journey, and Italy is wonderful in terms of creativity. And these partners are then able also to sell these solutions to venture capital investors. So we do have room to grow. And in Italy, in particular, we need to have the rules and regulations and guidelines. We are seen as a country full of red tape and bureaucracy. So actually, health is a common good, and we need to go over that red tape and make sure that the data in the hands of the skilled ones bring innovation. And so, yes, our company and all of the projects we're carrying out should be really seen as something you can be based on to do innovation.
Of course, like it happens in many different industries, innovation also needs flexibility and a new mindset to look forward. And actually, speaking through collaboration, Now, I'd love to ask a question to Professor Ravera and Professor Scambia, asking the following. What if you were calling out to your colleagues and ask for collaboration and also need for extra investment? What would you ask them to consider? Mr. Ravera, would you like to start? I think that collaboration and partnerships are both crucial, as nobody really has a single answer. So we constantly need to seek for the best alliance and partnership from a domestic viewpoint, but also from an international standpoint. And a second aspect, because we deal with data, patient data, and we struggle with patient data under many perspectives. I think it is important to make use of this data right from the beginning, the best way possible, so that whatever decision making is taking place, that sits on evidences. So we want to obtain something that is solid, well established, and something that it can be replicated as well. And then perhaps a third aspect. We need to be brave as well. At times, you make things work in an easier way. At some other times, you actually need to overcome bureaucracy, internal discussion, and actually, I have to say that you should always have a patient's journey in mind as opposed to anything else, and this is not always the case. I understand. Professor Scambia, how about your view? I very much agree with what Professor Ravera is saying, and by the way, my institute is currently collaborating with the institute that Professor Ravera is working in, and we constantly work together. I'd love to start from two aspects. First of all, we are faced with a completely new scenario in healthcare, and that's very true that we've learned a lot from the pandemic as well, as we have started to treat patients differently because we could assist them remotely. We could monitor their state of health remotely. Now, time has come perhaps to consolidate all of these outcomes. Indeed, we need to overcome some issues when it comes to bureaucracy, for instance, and definitely it is important now to find new investments. So companies that are willing to invest into new algorithms so that we might have a leaner, a slimmer way to manage our hospitals. And if we were having easier journey to be on, this would facilitate also our research and would make the investment more effective. What I'd love to focus on, perhaps, something that I always deem to be pretty easy to do, is a collaboration amongst companies such as Roche, and I'm so very thankful to Roche for their huge efforts. I would hope that the entire healthcare system would consider digitization more, and because digitization would allow us to have more data available in an easier manner. So companies and hospitals like us and companies like Roche should definitely perhaps make it clear also to the central government that investment in digitization has now become a crucial piece if we want to go forward. Thank you so much, Professor Scambia. And actually, I'd love to speak the three speakers of this panel. Thank you so much to all of you. And I would love to introduce the next topic and the next panel. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the day. So the next panel will be moderated in English, as we do have
the title of the next panel is From Clinical Needs to Entrepreneurship, How to Make Impactful an AI Solution for Precision Medicine. So we will listen to real-world examples of how AI has been impactful in the management of certain therapeutic areas. I think we have connected. Let me introduce our panelists. Fanny Sia, One Roche Head and AI and Digital Health. Hello, Fanny. Dr. Joseph Geraci, Chief Scientific Officer of Neurosene Health and Chief AI Scientist at Netramark. Hello, Joseph.
Hi.
Nicole Boas, founder of RareX. Hello, Nicole. And Indu Navar, founder of Everything ALS. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining this panel. So I will start with Fanny, and I'm going to ask you if you could explain to us your role and why you're here with us today.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Fanny C., and I'm the head of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Health for Roche Canada, reporting into Pharma International Informatics. My team and I at Roche have the responsibility of identifying opportunities where artificial intelligence may enable personalized healthcare to ensure better healthcare for more people faster. More specifically, where a vast amount of data may be processed faster than any one human may accomplish at any one time to achieve insights which drive patient empowerment, clinical decision support, access, regulatory, and research and development. Our present focus is the patient experience across the entire journey, which not only includes diagnosis and treatment, but also in the areas of prevention, survivorship, and end-of-life care. We have enabled this by developing strategic partnerships between the public and private sector in various regions. Instead of one-to-one relationships who interact over a short period of time, we have created many-to-many consortiums who become long-term collaborators and are mission and mandate focused. And just like a startup, adopt an agile mindset, adjusting tactics as they progress. These consortiums are not about a perfect roadmap, but more about a trusted effort towards the cause. These consortiums identify common challenges and align to resolve them with an open innovation and open data environment. It is a transparent, multi-organizational, multidisciplinary approach to solution development, validation, and medical implementation of AI-based solutions as drivers of personalized healthcare. Roche has progressing consortiums within the areas of COVID-19 through the Roche Data Science Coalition, whose insights informed pandemic task forces globally, and also in the areas of oncology, neurology, and rare condition. We have established an AI Center of Excellence dedicated to this partnering model called AI with Roche. It's also known as AIR. AIR partners include the Pan-Canadian AI Institutes, AMI, MILA, and the Vector Institute, home to the science and graduate programs led by global AI luminaries Geoffrey Hinton, Yoshua Bengio, and Richard Sutton, and they are all dedicated to AI for good. I am here today with my collaborators and, most importantly, my friends who have joined us at AIR in the hope to bring neuroscience and rare conditions into the future and modernizing healthcare in an accelerated pace. I'm excited for them to share our journey, and our hope would be for the Italian community to engage with us on our current and future initiatives. We can bring transformational changes forward together faster, and more effectively to bring better healthcare to populations globally.
Thank you, Fanny. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
I will now pass the word to Indu, and I'd like for her to tell us a bit more about her enterprise and how artificial intelligence plays a role in what you do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. And I came into this in a very different way, in the sense that I'm a technologist. My background is I'm an electrical engineer, undergraduate with software, computer science masters. And although I was very early member of what today is WebMD, we took an IPO in 1999. I've actually been starting companies and innovating in different verticals like manufacturing and cloud infrastructure. And I came into neuroscience because I had a up close and personal experience where my husband got diagnosed with one of the fatal neurological diseases. He was 49 years old, and he started having very, very early symptoms when he couldn't walk properly. And we went to the neurologist very early, and what we heard was, it's so early to say what it is. It could be very simple issue to it could be fatal, but come back after 8 months, we'll do one more test. And we're talking about, this is the best in class neurologist. So it got me thinking that we have so little in brain science for patients. It doesn't matter. We went to 5 very, very well-known neurologists and centers, and we heard the same thing. It's so early, come back after 8 months. And so my personal experience comes from having seen that it took us 2.5 years to get diagnosed. And by then, what I saw was 80% of his motor neurons were dead. And at that time, we got a diagnosis that he had motor neuron disease. That's what in Europe it's mainly known as, but it's called ALS. So he passed away, unfortunately, in August of 2019. So what I couldn't live with is knowing so much, and also knowing that AI and technology can do so much more in helping diagnose the problem. I set out to start Everything ALS. So that's my story on how I got into Everything ALS. So Everything ALS is focused on bringing technology innovations to neurological diseases. So with focused on ALS, we're also focusing on other neurological diseases. So our goal is to really change the way the clinical endpoints, that is how we measure in during the drug trials, and also how we actually diagnose the patient, so we can accelerate using artificial intelligence and machine learning with large data sets. And with that in mind, what we actually, I was introduced to Fanny, who is, like she said, we're more friends than trying to change this neuroscience. And we set out to do Kaggle Challenge. So Kaggle Challenge is, as it's being put up here, it's a healthcare challenge that is, Kaggle is owned by Google, but it works separately to understand the biology of ALS and bring clarity to the treatments. We set out the Kaggle Challenge. In comparison, in the institution, there were about 200 to 250 downloads in the last 3 years. And when we collaborated with this group, with Roche and Answer ALS was another organization who had the data and Everything ALS, and we also brought in ALS Canada, Ontario Brain Institute, and also Netromark, where Joe is going to talk about a little bit more about what Netromark provided. And we took a data set of about 134 people with ALS. And as you can see, it's a very small data set. And but we were able to actually take that and also put 30 people, healthy control population data set, and use Netromark platform and activate this data science community. And as comparison, we had over 30,000 people who actually came in and looked at the data and actually worked on it. About 600 people actually took up the challenge. It was a 2-month challenge. And we had about 51 submissions, really amazing submissions. So in comparison, what we were able to do previously in a smaller setting to Kaggle Challenge with Roche was unprecedented. And we're going to continue to work like this. And I will, that was my experience. And I think Joe from Netramark will talk a lot more about AI that was used behind the scenes to make this possible.
No, thank you, Indu. It's interesting to look at the issue from the patient's point of view. It is a different angle from what we've talked about until now.
And what my experience has been is that everybody sees part of an elephant. So we all have to come together to really see the whole elephant. And, the patients have a big part in this as well. So what we're trying to innovate is, as Fanny and Roche calls it, advocacy 3.0. So we really want to partner with, Roche and other startups to really bring in solutions from also have patients participate in it.
Thank you. And I guess now, as you introduced, it would be interesting to hear Joseph's testimony and what your role is, Joseph, and why you're here today.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everybody. Ciao. I'm a mathematician, medical scientist, and machine learning and quantum machine learning specialist. And so I created a startup called Netramark, and in the beginning of this challenge, we were one of the groups who were bringing together, the patients, the clinicians, the researchers, industry, and also, investors. And so Netramark was responsible for, one of the groups who was responsible for putting the data together and then offering it to the Kaggle community that Indu was talking about, so that we can create this joint effort in analyzing the data. And today I'm going to show you a little bit, very briefly, of something we did. The way this started was as a medical scientist, I was working with students, and I was working with pharmaceutical companies and other physicians and scientists, and I was actually overcome with this idea that machine learning is great, but there's a lot of problems with the complexity of patient populations. Especially, I was working in oncology and also in neuroscience. And so what we did was we started to build a platform. I started to imagine, actually, back then, how to build a platform that can bridge these gaps. And so the situations we were trying to attack is the fact that it's very difficult to label patients properly because there's so many reasons why a disease could manifest. And the other side is we needed to bridge the gap between machine intelligence and the scientists and the doctors who are working with patients. Next slide. And so what we did is I ended up leaving academia for a while to raise money and to start this company. And what we did is we ended up helping pharmaceutical companies through various stages of the pharmaceutical lifestyle, through the different stages. And we've been offering these services for a while, and we've grown. Next slide. And so what ended up happening was it became very clear, and this was mentioned previously by Indu, is that a lot of these data sets are very small, and the patient populations are so complex that you needed methods that could improve the machine intelligence. So you need a method that could help it in this situation. So as a mathematician, what I did was I started developing techniques that were able to do just that. And at the same time, you want to make machine learning a little bit smarter in this situation. And you also want to be able to get people involved through an interactive interface. and allow the machine intelligence and the machine to interact. Next slide. And the way we did this is we actually started combining a lot of different methods. We started creating algorithms that were actually based on biological, we were inspired by biology. For example, worm biology, the way neurons actually work. And what we did is we started developing techniques that moved beyond standard methods, and we're able to create really great representations. And what you're seeing here, and what I'm going to show you, is how the machine's able to create many hypotheses. And then we use a combination of machine intelligence to extract models that can then be used. And the goal here is to be able to build biomarkers and to also understand new ways to drug different diseases. Next slide. Right, so can you play the video, please? Okay, so what you're looking at here is one of the platforms that our company built. And what we're gonna show you is an attempt that the machine made to understand this amazing data set that Indu and all of these groups came together to create. And what we're modeling here is the difference between, so what you're seeing here is the machine's able to highlight each patient. So each point that you're seeing here is an individual, and the blue points are people that have the disease initiate in their limbs, right? So in ALS, some people, it starts in their throat and other people in their limb. And so what this technology was able to do, and quite uniquely, was able to find a map, a metric space of these people, like these people that are being circled here, are very different than everybody else. And then as you zoom in, you can actually see this map. And what this machine is doing is essentially extracting these complex patient relationships. If I can say it in Italian, I would say, le relazioni complesse tramite I paziente, right? So it's the complex relationships between the patients. So look what happens as we zoom in, you have this fractal kind of metric space, and look what happens as you go in. You see the bulbar initiation is that red cluster that separates completely out. So in this way, we create these maps and we start to elucidate these very complex patient relationships. That's my time for today. So it's great being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joseph, and congratulations on your Italian. Very good. So let me go on to Nicole, and we'd really like to hear your story of RareX.
Thank you. So first, thank you so much to everyone who's been developing everything surrounding this conference. So we're honored to be here. So first, I really want to talk about RareX and Roche. When we talk about a shared vision, especially in rare disease, sometimes it's hard and not everyone really understands what the future goals and needs are in rare disease, which is has so many unique nuances, based just, by default, right? You have over 10,000 now ultra rare diseases or rare diseases that affect small populations globally. And in a true collaboration and partnership, Roche has really worked to identify and be part of the solution where most organizations kind of step away or are afraid. And so I just want to really say thank you to Roche for their commitment to really do what's right for the patient community, regardless of disease, regardless of your location, regardless of your zip code. And it's just really important to note that the ecosystem of the biopharma sector globally hasn't fully embraced the future value or kind of needs that are required to really advance efforts in rare disease treatment and therapy development. And so again, just thank you to everyone here today. and to Fanny. So just a little really quick about me. Again, my name is Nicole Boyce. I am the former founder, or I'm the founder of Global Genes. 22 years ago, my dear friend's son was born in California with all sorts of complications, including they thought he was blind. He was born without part of his brain, but was sent home with no prognosis and no diagnosis. And over the course of 4 years and their diagnostic odyssey, they were able to have, they received a fluke diagnosis from a physical therapist of a disease called Gilbert's syndrome. That started my friend's journey to help support their children. At that time, I was working in the biotech sector and recognized that there was this extraordinarily large community of patients and diseases that we'd never heard of. And in looking into kind of this whole world of patient advocacy and rare disease, what I stumbled upon was one of the largest disease communities on the planet, namely rare disease and orphan disease. And at the time, over, a little under 2 decades ago, there wasn't a lot of support. And so at the time, we decided to create an organization called Global Genes that really existed at the time to provide best practices around love and hugs. How can you survive as a parent advocate? How can you, work to get through your day? But what was so interesting is over the last decade and a half, you saw a transition and an emergence, new opportunities and new responsibilities on the heads of patient advocates to drive innovation and kind of new opportunities in research for the disease that they care about. So you've heard from a perfect example of an the kind of next generation advocate in Indu. Indu, like many in the rare disease sector, have to go out and start things on their own. And that requires a lot because biopharma and research hasn't traditionally looked to patients as a place to de-risk early investment or to help understand or characterize a disease early on. So that everything about patient and patient advocacy in rare disease has moved from love and hugs to truly supporting next generation therapy development. And that's where we all sit now in RareX. So RareX spun out of the former nonprofit organization that I started called Global Genes. And RareX has begun, or it exists, to really help support patients and patient advocates in the rare disease ecosystem at scale, in data collection and data connection, to really help accelerate what Indu and Dr. Joe have been able to do in ALS, which is obviously one of many devastating diseases in rare disease. So we've taken a really interesting approach to help automate the ability to collect research-ready data at scale. Whether you're an undiagnosed patient, an N of 1 patient, or a small disease community, you should be able to have the ability to start collecting data that will ultimately attract interest and help support the early research that needs to be done in rare disease research. What we know about the AI community is that there's a need for data. And if we can do a better job actually standing up patient longitudinal data, natural history data in a way that's usable across multiple diseases, that creates an ecosystem of data that all of you in the AI community can work their magic and really start looking at correlations across these rare diseases and help get access to data that wasn't traditionally available. In addition, with new technology, the notion of data federation and interconnecting data and disparate data sources is also providing new opportunities to identify, support some of the early basic research that we know needs to be done to create that funnel to build these data ecosystems so that communities like yourself and other AI efforts can look and help move some of this critical research forward more quickly in rare disease. So the future is now. We're so grateful to Roche for the extraordinary work that they've done in leading in supporting a lot of these new approaches to accelerating research in rare diseases and other diseases in the neurospace. So again, thank you so much. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks to all four of you, for these real life experience that you brought to the panel, and examples of how innovation in AI is born and then grows into realities that impact patients' lives, and also examples of how collaboration is crucial with among the various actors that we've mentioned at the beginning of this event. Now, just to close the panel, what I'd like to ask all four of you is 2 minutes each. Tell us about what you're focused on right now and what you want to do next. And we can go in the same order. So, Fanny, maybe you can start.
Absolutely, happy to start. And as you can see, I'm surrounded by people who are inspiring and passionate and extremely capable and smart to bringing us into the future. So thank you, my friends, for speaking with us today and sharing your story. But it just goes to show you that there are these people all across the world in various disciplines who are willing to come together to empower the healthcare system. And now there's a vehicle to bring them together, and that's AIR. So our ask of the Italian community is to join us in this collaborative network approach to solving big challenges in healthcare. And our next steps are building validation networks across the globe that are dedicated to safe and secure development, validation, and medical implementation of AI solutions. I also wanted the community to know that we are offering our expertise, our data, our tools to active innovators in the market. So in particular, we know that there's a very strong clinical trial environment for ALS patients in Italy. So if you're working on ALS and would like to collaborate with us, please reach out to us. You can reach us at aiwithroche.com, and we look forward to meeting you and working with you.
Indu.
Perfect. So, just jumping on what Fanny said, we're very, very, focused on neurodegenerative diseases, ALS being as our primary focus. We're also recently started working with Parkinson's and also with FTD, the frontal temporal dementia. So what our ask would be is that what we're working on is digital biomarkers. So that is, we are actually analyzing all your physiological data, speech, facial changes, fine motors, gross motor, and also breathing. So by end of this year, in 2022, we'll have data from all 4 of the quadrants of what makes the whole. This is how we analyze today, but we analyze it using pen and paper, and we want to digitize it with continuous monitoring and sensors. So our ask would be to have team in Italy who's very, very active in this neurodegenerative to join us in this. And we recently announced our partnership with Critical Path Institute, which is FDA, to bring in, accelerate some of these findings and get this FDA approved. So we would love to partner with Europe and also Italy, especially to really join us in creating this digital biomarker so we can change the way we've been doing this for over 70 years. So it's high time we actually innovate and just don't follow what's being done. So we would love for you to be in our innovation camp and working with us and Roche together. Thank you.
Joseph?
Yeah, so as been expressed by everybody, and what Nicole was saying is, we need data. So a big part of what I work on, and I'm sorry if this didn't come across, is that explainable AI is a big part of what I was showing you. The machine is able to explain what's actually driving phenomenon in our technology. And so what would be wonderful is to be able to integrate different data sources so that we can actually understand what's driving this phenomenon. We're now working on finding novel targets and novel drugs to help out with several diseases, including ALS. And on the digital biomarker side that Indu was talking about, a big part, another aspect of what we're doing has to do with, a lot of these groups can see different parts of the elephant. And a big part of where I come in is I help to integrate that picture so we can see the whole elephant, right? So what I'm asking for is if anyone's interested in collaborating, sharing data, and even maybe, allowing us to share the output of our system, we'd be open to that. So again, thank you to Roche and RareX and everything ALS. Thank you.
And Nicole.
Thank you so much. Our ask from all of you is broader, and we've built and are building an infrastructure to support global patient advocates in collecting and sharing research-ready data. We need to accelerate and streamline this process. So if you and then second is RareX's goal is to support over 100 disease areas or disease communities globally and continue to bring them onto the network and the platform, kind of building out this meta effort as well. If you are engaged with disease communities that need help and support, please send them our way. We have a full, global infrastructure that can help support early data collection with all the right data governance to openly share data so that everyone wins, right? We need to do whatever we can to help accelerate research in rare conditions, and we think we have a solution that can help do that in scale globally. And if anyone has any other questions for us at RareX, please feel free to reach out to me directly. But thank you for all the work that you do in research. It's critical and it's important. And on behalf of myself and the community that we serve, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being with us today. This brings us to the end of the first part of this meeting. So I'll now call on the stage Irene Simone. She will conduct the second part of the meeting, and we'll go in more deep on different frameworks and models of collaboration. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Federica. I'm pleased and honored to take the stage right after you. And I'm thrilled to introduce our distinguished guest and to begin this panel discussion about what should we do to turn AI into a reality. It is becoming clearer and clearer that the multiple and different diverse ways in which healthcare providers and large hospital groups can collaborate very often make key decision makers as hospital directors or data protection officers or CTOs the main bottlenecks of the collaboration process. And that's why? Because of the large number of projects concerning artificial intelligence solutions and because of the large amount of investment on this project. So, which is the most appropriate, let's say, collaborative framework we should aim to, and which are the steps to follow in order to smooth this project? To talk about these topics, today we have here with us two guests that I would like to introduce you. Sven Jungmann, CEO of Founders Lane, a corporate venture building company and one of the main advisors on digital transformation and technology for the World Economic Forum, and Alfredo Cesario, Open Innovation Manager at Fondazione Policlinico Gemelli and CEO of Gemelli Digital. Please, thank you very much. Thank you very much, both of you, and thank you for being here. So, Sven, let me start with you. I would like to ask you, could you please provide the Italian community with some guidelines or a trace concerning the crucial steps to activate a successful AI project? And then at the European level, what are you discussing about? What are you seeing?
Thanks. So I think, first of all, and we also discussed it earlier, is there are a lot of people who come up with some recipe type of cookbook approach, which sounds very charming, but often it doesn't work. So we have that too, right? We have a way, first step is more or less this, second step then this. But actually, I think in 100% of the cases, we have to deviate from it. And that's because every hospital setting is different. The use cases you're working on are different. The people you have to interact with are also different. And I believe that's very important to keep in mind. But maybe one thing to start with is always, we often see this, right? The tendency of people being so excited about AI that they become digital fashionistas, putting on digital bells and whistles everywhere. When what you really should be doing is to start with the problem you're trying to solve and start with the people. And you can touch on it a bit more, actually, right?
It was one of my points, so I strike it out.
No, okay. Because you can build on it by saying who these people are, maybe.
Yeah.
Why don't I pass this on to you, and then I'll follow on.
Yes, this was one of my points. Actually, it was my third point. That when so I have to strike it out. So maybe because of my background, I'm a surgeon, I'm really a pragmatic person and a pragmatic clinical researcher. So the hype, we have many fashionistas now around AI. So basically what it is AI? It's advanced mathematics that is applied to information to derive actionable knowledge, and hopefully it will derive more focused and better knowledge that then must be tested following the proper clinical validation pathways, the regulatory pathways for certification and credentials. So my first, and then the question that I really would like to answer is that what would you like to see when AI is approaching clinical use? First, if someone arrives to me and I have a wonderful AI solution, then I say, there is something that it doesn't work.
And so I think that the first lesson is really try to start with the end user in mind, and this end user normally is not one person, because healthcare doesn't happen in a vacuum, as you know, right? So I get very annoyed by this obsession we have to be patient-centric. What does it mean? Like, when is a patient just being by themselves? You always have the relatives, you have the doctors interacting, the nurses, the therapists, and so on, and behind them, you have different types of people you need to convince in the hospital. You have the user buyer, which could be the people who actually end up using your technology. Then you have the technical buyer. These are the people who worry about GDPR and how do you integrate it and so on. And then you also have the commercial buyer, and they will want to know how does it.
Yes, then I don't know. I will talk about the weather outside today. Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead.
But you had some.
Yeah. Of course. And then I think that the running title of this meeting, it says "Building AI Solution Together." So again, if a fashionistas arrive and say, "I have a wonderful AI solution," okay, tell me, how did you develop it? Who was around the table to develop that? Did you have the patients? Did you have the physicians? The clinical know-how, the technology, and then have you gone through all the checks that you have to do in the quality of data, how you use data? So did you respect, are you compliant with GDPR regulation? And then when you derive a product, have you certified it according to the medical device regulation? Then when you arrive to me and you say, this is a product, an algorithm, a biomarker, whatever it is, then I really like to see how you did develop it and how you did certify it. Because then I have to start as a clinical researcher to test it against very solid benchmarks. Otherwise, I cannot give it any value.
So here the question then often becomes, where do you start, right? And it could be that you want to build this really fancy thing that ends up predicting if somebody will get a heart attack. But this can be very difficult from the regulatory perspective, from the data protection perspective, and so on. And sometimes there are a lot of things where you can create a lot of value where you don't fall under the medical device regulation. So maybe you can optimize how X-ray appointments are being booked and know which patients need a longer walking way to get there and so on, and try to start from there and then gradually evolve into something that's more and more risky and therefore also more and more regulated and needs more and more of this evidence. And another aspect that I would like to build on what you just said is this concept of outcome action pairing, which is, it's great to have a prediction. It's great if somebody can tell you, or a device can tell you, your patient will need to go to the ICU in the next 5 minutes. But in these 5 minutes, what are you going to do differently, right? You probably already know that this patient is in trouble. So what value is this? And this is where this idea of outcome action pairing comes into play. The outcome is your prediction, but what is the action you can pair it to? So how much, for example, lead time do you need in order to make a difference? And that's again then where your point comes in of...
Yeah, absolutely. This is really important, because when we have any innovation hitting the market, I would say, or hitting the real life scenario, we really need to have planned on beforehand what is the impact of this innovation in the endeavor that we are managing, for example. Imagine, and I like the example that you did, no? You have an algorithm that says that I'm going to have a heart attack in 3 hours. Then is the system ready to manage this information? So do I have a system that I call a number and I say, okay, I have a certified algorithm that is telling me that I will get an heart attack in 3 hours. Then what? I run to the first emergency and then I say, I have an algorithm that is saying that in 3 hours I will die. Okay, triage, code 3, 8 hours waiting in the lobby. And this is the first thing. So we really need to plan carefully in advance, if we get to our research goals in terms of new instruments, how this will impact the organizational structure. And then, oh my God, economics. If we don't understand how this impact will impact sustainability, and in Italy this is really something important, maybe we will not have any uptake by the system, and this innovation will just fall for the very few that can afford an out-of-pocket approach, and we cannot really do something like this. So I really think that we really need to plan, and we need to build solution together, again, in Italy, for example, with the system. And I go back to what Professor Scambia was telling me. We really need to have the courage to challenge the political liars to say, we are going in that direction, so in 5 years' time, you will have to have made a very, very deep rethinking on how the system is organized and reimbursed.
You had a point on this with the financing of prevention also, right? Which I found quite interesting.
Yeah, of course. Imagine that the algorithm can stratify a layer of the population that is going to have heart attack. So it's not only the management of the individual, it's the management at the population level. So what is the evidence and how strong the evidence must be for me to convince the payers? In a place, in a country like Italy, where I have 21, 22 payers, health system, very different. So how do I address this further level of complexity? Vertigo is there, I think.
We just ran off. You just asked one question. Do you want me to reply to the European aspect also?
Yes, please.
So there's another big topic that people are massively concerned about when it comes to AI in general, but also especially in healthcare, and that's this whole topic of algorithmic bias. So how do I make sure that we don't just train it on white men and then unleash it on everybody else, and then predictions get wrong? And there could even be things where if you have a certain skin color, then your waiting time gets longer or whatever, because it learned from something dysfunctional and biased already in the first place. So I believe that collaboration in general is important for many reasons, but it's also important to ensure that we get a lot of diversity where, I mean, Europe, at least to some degree, has a lot of it. Also thanks to refugee movements, right? I'm not just talking about traditional European diversity, but global diversity. And we have the right frameworks for that. We have at least, you might criticize the medical device regulation, but at least it's more or less harmonized. So, you know, going around helps a lot. And what I'm learning here, to be honest, many people where I come from in Berlin, when we think of Milan, we think of the great fashion industry, we think of cars, we think of, I don't know, good food and culture and a lot of great things. But sort of the healthcare community is not something that's primarily comes up to my mind. And yet, what I'm learning is that there's so much going on where you have possibilities that I don't have in Berlin, right? So even from that perspective, I think it would be very precious to start collaborations on different AI innovations, because it will allow us to do things we otherwise couldn't, right?
Absolutely. Now it would seem that everything can be simple, no? Do you have data? Yes, so we can collaborate. that's not really the point. But on many layers, because one thing is the qualitative approach of data. For example, in our hospital, we needed to go in a process that lasted almost 3 years and a half, 4 years, to establish how strong was the infrastructure where our data was collected, and how the methods by which we collected data are strong enough now to warrant the use of this data to synthesize a digital biomarker, for example. So the best way to do this, just to cut a long story short, is maybe to use retrospective data to create a prototype of something that can be a predictive model, but then to be really strict in training and further testing and benchmarking these models with properly gathered data. And when I say properly, it's not only technology, on which I would open a bracket. I think everybody is reading that in the next future, possibly, most of the data that will be analyzed by AI will be synthetic data. So this means that we really need to go again to rethink the system and rethink what is the regulatory, but as well the technology framework that we will approve and check. This is the technology and the methods that make data useful and actionable to create AI products. I think we really have so many questions to be answered and so many challenges ahead, and opportunities, of course.
Sure. Thank you, both of you, for the very interesting input. But right now, Alfredo, I have a question just for you. So, but you can interact. You can interact.
Be creative.
It's more dynamic. It's more dynamic.
Of course. Of course.
Yes, of course. So, if it's true that there isn't a cookbook approach in order to kickstart and implement successful AI projects, yet it's true that there are some key success factors or red flags that we should be able to identify to spot, on the one hand, those promising ideas and projects, and on the other hand, those potential obstacles that might interfere with the project development. So how can we do that? So in your opinion, you, Alfredo, are the archetype or of a key enabler or gatekeeper who can also block development. And I would like to ask you, what do you need to see to have confidence in a team or in an idea and to understand that it is worth investing in it? And on the other side, which are the red flags, in your opinion?
Okay, so now I really need to remove the glass and start being politically not correct. When in my hospital we decided to create, and with Giovanni Scambia, a direction which is called Open Innovation, and it's really, it means we open the doors to potential collaboration. Through these doors, we had, fortunately, teams like the Real World Evidence team, and I thank Noemi Porrello and Fabrizio from Roche, because that was one of the first real co-creation activities, and Alicia was sort of a director of this, so thank you. But we had as well people coming through the door and saying, okay, I have a good system to go into your data and synthesize things that are of interest to me. So the open innovation paradigm and building AI, building solutions together really needs a very robust framework, because it's not only a framework that protects first the property of the data, which is the patients. We don't need to forget that the final user of our products and the producer, in a sense, of our products is the patients. So we really need to be very strict and robust from that perspective. And then we really need to implement a series of checkpoints in terms of respect of regulations, as I said before, that from one perspective protects the concept of data privacy, data usage, and from the other perspective, it's sort of a check on the quality of the overall system that will synthesize our AI product. It's like checking a little bit a chemical factory that produces a pill. We really need to produce from the raw material to all the process, infrastructurally, functionally, organizationally. So we don't need to, and I go back to what I said the first time, we don't need to believe in the hype. Otherwise, the hype can really bring and waste possibly money and waste possibly data that are, in the end, a product of the real life of real people. So we really need to know that even if a database is some bits on a screen, there are life stories there. So we really need to respect this value, I think. I don't know if I replied to...
Yes, of course you did. Of course you did. Thank you so much. We still have a couple of minutes if we want to add something to these very last points. Sven?
Yeah, no, I wonder how this works in Italy, but I had some hospital interactions in Germany where I lost a lot of hope in the secondary use of existing data. And it started with us getting access to the data of 240,000 patients, all pseudonymized and so on. It went through all the legal processes, which took months. And it was a rehab hospital for orthopedic surgery and so on, which means that they're not under stress, right? So they don't get me wrong, right? Of course, they have a lot of work to do, but there's no emergency department that gets you messed up. And so I was pretty hopeful that we would get a good data set. And there were 240 or 50,000 patients. And out of those, only 140,000 actually had a diagnosis. And I said, how do you get to a rehab hospital for 3 weeks and there's no diagnosis stored in the system for you? And nobody could explain to me why. They didn't know. And then I thought, okay, let's ignore diagnosis. They're not so important anyway. Let's just go to the lab values. They're standardized, right? And then even within the same hospital, within the same year, a blood test had leukocytes in 3 different synonyms. There was LEU, then there was just LEU leukocytes with a K, and then one with a C, and then there were others, but they were actually urine, but it didn't say, and so on and so on. And then for each of these synonyms, they also had 3 different reference ranges. And then we came up with all sorts of mathematical models to try and make them harmonic and comparable. But after a while, we just thought, actually, we don't even know anymore if this is any use or if we're not overfitting to the specific hospital. And that was super frustrating. Then I thought of my own time. So I'm also a doctor, and I worked in the emergency room. And whenever I needed to close a case, then the machine asked me to give all the diagnoses in the system. And that's fine. If I have the time, I'm happy to do it. But if I had somebody with a heart attack, I wouldn't be there. Was it a STEMI or is it left anterior? And then so instead, I just coded pain without any other details. So all the most urgent patients you had, they had this really abstract thing because it just made the machine shut up so that I could finally take the patient to the catheter or to the ICU. And that's why I think we shouldn't be too naive. We always talk about what you also said earlier, data is the new gold or the new oil. But it needs to be refined just like other oil too. And sometimes it's completely wasted and you can't really get it out or it costs so much. And then that raises the question of maybe there is something to be said about how do you enter the data in the first place and how do you get the digital biomarkers into play and how do you make the user interfaces better, which goes back to how do you solve the actual needs of the people in the field? I'm not there, sort of my user story is not, I want to curate better data so that somebody else can do something with it. My user story is, I want to get, as a doctor, I want to get my patient to survive this day and the rest is just getting in my way, right? So these are the things where I think we should put in a lot of effort and then we can still think about what do we do with the data also. Of course, we have to think about it in the beginning, but that kind of is bringing one dilemma together with 2 extremes. One is you want to have this big North Star of, I want this fancy machine learning thing to do something that changes how we treat people, to move from reactive to proactive. But the other thing is this bird in the hand kind of principle. What is it that I have now that I can use to get there? And what are the foundations I need to set? And that's where I believe often people don't think enough about because everybody wants to go to the North Star first.
Okay, maybe in the last minute, I would like to make a little bit of synthesis of some of the concepts that I got today. Dr. De Cicco before was talking about having patient support programs, having systems that follow the patient pathways and the patient journeys and that provide data in the quantity and in the quality. That is what we need to derive actionable information from this data. And as well, when we go to historical databases and we try to synthesize an algorithm or a biomarker, then we then test with prospectively collected data, I think that we really need to be open to one concept. we still continue as an average to think deterministically. We continue to think in an if-then fashion. So we say, okay, artificial intelligence will just accelerate the if-then. I don't think so. I think that artificial intelligence, and before one of the speakers was talking about quantum machine learning, we really move probabilistically, and we will have big surprises. I think that as a physician, I am opening more and more my mind to the possibility that artificial intelligence and new methodologies of analysis, given that the data are quantitatively and qualitatively enough level to derive good products, will give us very big surprises. And possibly these surprises will give us the possibility to have common layers of understanding for chronic diseases, for example, as a bunch, or for rare diseases as a bunch. So we really need to be ready to open the silos the way we think, because AI will give us, I think, very big surprises in terms of knowledge.
Great, perfect, right on time, just 5 seconds left, so we're really perfect. I would like to thank you very much both for this interesting and dynamic panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
So, thank you. Ok, right now, so let's switch to Italian. Passiamo all'italiano per la prossima panel discussion.
We're now switching to Italian. Milena Prisco, responsible to Studio Pavia and Saldo. Fidelia Caccini, researcher hygiene and public health at Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore.
Buon pomeriggio, prego.
And digital expert engaged, Ministry of Health. Good afternoon.
Benissimo. Buon pomeriggio, buonasera, grazie.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Fidelia. Well, good afternoon to all of you as well. So we have learned from prior panels, some witnesses, as well as some examples of framework and collaboration from a national and international standpoint. And actually, to date, very impactful AI projects are being implemented right now. Still, the most difficult thing to do when you want to start is actually to collaborate on an agreed level. So the very first level to start from. So Fidelia, I have a question for you to start with. Could you provide us with a general framework in terms of what we're going in Europe when it comes to collaboration models, when it comes to develop AI-based solutions? Okay, well, I'd love to step back for a moment and tell you what is the EU doing from an AI standpoint. To date, commitment has been really important, has been really significant. We are now reviewing one of the final documents and making some amendments, some adjustments to it. Such document clearly shows the willingness of Europe, from an EU standpoint, to establish an entity that may allow AI solutions to be implemented through frameworks and systems which clarify what is mandatory for developers and users, so that we may really rely on AI-based applications. And of course, and what really matters the most within the healthcare. So this is the strategic plan in the EU, and that is what we're currently working on. But what is really crucial when it comes to collaboration is that we have in place some potential tools to develop. With reference to Article 53 of the key document of AI development, well, this Article 53, is clearly showing the pre-requirements and key features of the test environment that should be in place for us to actually reach reach out to the goals of the EU from an AI standpoint. And that has to do with the supervision, monitoring, and perhaps if you can show my slide, I would be very grateful. So this test environment would allow this key concept to be developed. So we are interested in what we call the test and experimentation facilities. So what we aim at is a test environment, a number of test environments where it is possible to study, research, test, and validate so that we may finally actually validate a free risk or a risk-free, so to speak, AI-based solution to the market. And actually, if we want to have such a collaboration in place within the EU, this is what we really need to start from these regulations. Because actually, EU really expects artificial intelligence to become the one technology that becomes available for everyone and that can really make EU competitive with the rest of the world. Of course, whilst ensuring the respect of all rights. And I'm thinking about all the requirements within the healthcare industry, which we know is super delicate when it comes to risks, for instance. We don't want to rely on technology that are still risky for us to use. So let's say that so far we have decided upon such collaborations entities that will become some kind of a network, so to speak. These networks will identify some hubs, and in each hub, in each country, potentially attending the network, so they will have a national hub to refer to, so that data can be collected and tested within the test environment that has been priorly tested and validated before they go to market. And these are also going to be centers of excellence from a healthcare standpoint. And perhaps also tech companies will refer to the same apps, as well as developers who are interested in bringing these technologies forward.
Thank you, Fidelia. And what about Italy? What are we doing to sort of embrace all of the European input? Well, we're still lacking such a framework. But in Italy, we do have initiatives underway which express this desire to collaborate. Like, for example, a recent alliance has been achieved, and also we have some guests belonging to this alliance. So the Gemelli Hospital and Humanitas Group. So Professor Ricciardi wanted to achieve such an alliance, the Alliance for Health. This is the name. Of course, the aim is the synergy in excellent health facilities so that we can apply AI-based solutions into the real world. So the Ministry of Health proposed some calls for standard, and so this was the year for health, and the idea was to apply jointly, to actually, present a project jointly for this call on the part of the ministry. So we participated together to the call for tender, and the aim was finding AI solutions for clinical trials. So joining efforts of these excellent health facilities, making sure that AI is now at the center for applications focusing on clinical trials. So like starting from the application of new molecules with the involvement of the pharma companies, but also technology companies will certainly be involved. So the use of AI for different projects, starting from identifying the molecules to following the patient during the follow-up, throughout the whole process and all its steps. We know sometimes that there is this problem of costs in terms of carrying out clinical trials, and this has an impact on the bottom line of farmers, but also on the cost of drugs. So it's interesting to have technology world meeting with the health world and the pharma world, so that we all together can exploit technology as a tool to innovate together. We can only hope that such initiatives become more frequent, and also this will be one of the opportunities. So having the institutional approval of such collaboration, so that our health world can innovate further. Thank you. So it's a path that has been developed right now, but you have already taken out concrete actions, right? Yes, this is the aim. So we have this reference framework that makes all of this possible. Then it's up to us to join forces and overcome resistance and biases, so that we can really foster collaboration and knowledge exchange, understanding that this is the right time to do it. We do have support coming from the European Union. Europe wants to be competitive with the rest of the world in terms of innovation and innovative projects. So Europe is fostering collaboration among all the member states. And if Italy is able to work as a team, and that many excellent health facilities join forces, as I said before, and can participate in all of this, we will be at the right step, and we will follow suit what is happening. And this is very important for our industrial world as well, and the pharma industry. So there will be advantages for all stakeholders in the health field besides patients and citizens. Thank you very much, Fidelia. Milena, what was the impact of the international best practice in Italy, and where corporate companies are ready for that? Well, looking at from the private sort of viewpoint, the high tech, or the Silicon Valley high tech, that was what saved us. But at the beginning, in Italy, we were not ready. They were just there looking at the usual frameworks for licenses, for R&D contracts. So they were still, there in that sort of environment where you would do things together and physically develop a software. But after this afternoon, when we have spoken about data and sharing data, the activity of the startup, letting aside venture capital, brings in something different. So contract templates had to evolve. And this evolution started by understanding the need that you can really trust a typical contract. Of course, the basic notions on copyright and so on and so forth will still be there. But, as a lawyer, when I had to relate with the pharma company on this agreement, well, at the beginning we did not understand the need to read in a different way the service, the product that was there available. So doing this reasoning of working in cloud, sharing data with suppliers that bring in the solution and that customize it in the cloud. There is this crucial topic of intellectual property that can have different facets. Of course, the intellectual property might stay in the hands of the one or the other, or in the hands of the startup, for example. The startup is bringing in a solution, but this has to be then customized. And then the lawyers, of course, try and find a final solution in terms of IP management. But also, let's not forget international frameworks. So data management is key, and it goes through the software. If you consider that today, thanks to the evolution in EU regulation, software can also be classified as a medical device, so from SaaS to MD. It's an evolution. And of course, law should act as a tool to provide, to achieve a solution and a common ground, and therefore also adjust to the needs of the parties. So think about this concept of software, an IT platform, for example, the safety of that software, security of it, and if the software is not working as it is expected, then of course you have those wrapped warranties that are so important, or the request for certification, or the request for exemption of liabilities, and so on and so forth, because these platforms extract data and access data and keep them stored. So the complexity level is so high, but we can tackle this. We can tackle all of this, keeping the general sort of principles intact, the civil law principles intact. But of course, as has agreement that can imply also distribution mechanisms, you might understand that the data management part is core. And besides data management, to make sure that the data is aggregated or in the hands of the startup or can be kept and the culprit, well, you need a specific policy, data security. This is also key, with the data breach policies that are key. So a contractual framework for AI applied to healthcare, well, you need to have a holistic view. You have the corporate lawyer, the IP lawyer, the data protection lawyer, but we all work together, and there cannot be one perspective overcoming the other. This is fundamental. And then this new the data as it is in itself. We're not talking about abstract data. We're talking about data that is pertaining patient. And then the ESG. This is a buzzword, of course, in terms of sustainable finance, but all of this is also linked to CDR. A corporation has to act according to corporate digital responsibility principles. Also, when they create a contractual framework, you cannot turn your eyes from that. We talk about human beings. So what's the impact of the digital use of this data, or the use of my application on the users? So in a time when these intangible factors, apparently non-financial ones, are fundamental. So when you start setting up a partnership and you think about R&D related safety with regarding AI, then you really have to have CDR at the basis. But I think we're well equipped for that on the experience that we have gained in the last 5-6 years. I think we can be competitive at international level, also based on our legal principles.
Yes, I'm very much addicted to myself to the so-called CDR. From the very beginning, as sustainability is cross-functional and it has to be there from the beginning, because that is something that will generate repercussions all over. Yes, it generates value as well. Yes, of course. So thank you so much, Milena and Fidelia. Thank you both for this very interesting discussion.
Grazie. Allora in questo momento lascerei il palco per la
I would love to leave the floor to Amelia Parente, and she will close the event. Amelia, she's from Roche Italia.
Buonasera a tutti, grazie mille.
Good evening everyone. How about drawing conclusions in such a beautiful afternoon? I will try to summarize it as much as I can. Now, let's fall in love with the problem and not with the solution. The problem is how to prevent, how we treat, how do we ensure the best effective treatment to the greatest majority of patients. So we often tend to fall in love with solutions and not with problems. So I'd rather actually swap this. And after this short remark, this pre-requirement, I hope you will share my conclusions. You'll be happy about my conclusions, as I'm kind of connecting the dots after gathering so many arguments and insights. So I have tried to summarize according to the alphabet letters from A to S. So the very first pre-requirement for AR to reach out to the outcome we have predefined is alliances, horizontal alliances, partnerships between public and private sectors, hospitals, institutions, companies, patients, advocacy associations. So horizontal partnership, but also, of course, cross-country collaborations as well. As Mr. De Chico said earlier on, well, when it comes, for instance, to rare disease, which is, by the way, the entity I represent today, well, you don't want to limit yourself to your domestic borders. Otherwise, the outcome will never be global. So, alliances, horizontal and cross-country alliances. B for bureaucracy. We have said, and we have said many times, speaking with investment people, that unless bureaucracy helps forming alliances, they will never be implemented. C for capabilities as well as courage. We have heard from an important hospital, from Gemelli Policlinico, which, if I'm not mistaken, it manages some 60 million data, and they have hired a number of data scientists to work on those. So skills and competencies which are crucial for AI to transform into reality and not just a fashionista fad. 4. D for data. I have learned data being mentioned extensively. We have an issue of quality, of quantity. We have an issue of governance as well as interoperability of data. People are now saying that data is the new oil. Economists say that this is a very wrongful statement, because different from petrol, different from oil, data will never make make people poorer once they're giving out. So we actually should speak about protection and generosity of data. E for empowerment. We mentioned many stakeholders that can become central, crucial, that may benefit from AI as a pivotal tool for our outcome. And we spoke about a patient-centric approach in order to return time to patients for their life and to physicians so that they can take care of them. The last F from framework, regulatory framework, and that is as crucial, and it is a crucial topic that has been extensively mentioned during the panel before the last. How about tackling biases when we develop algorithms? Of course, the regulatory framework should tackle biases as well. Now, these were some of the notes that I was taking throughout this extraordinary afternoon. I'd love to conclude same as I started. Let's fall in love with outcome. Let's fall in love with the life. Let's fall in love with our patients. Thank you so much to everyone.
E con questo io chiamerei a chiudere questo pomeriggio.
I would like to welcome on stage Federica Draghi, Irene Simone, and Alice Zilioli.
Eccole qua.
Here they are.
Eccole. Quindi un palco tutto al femminile.
So, women on stage, only women on stage, and we have decided that we would leave you with the word that would be very meaningful for us today: collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. For me as well. Well, let's work together. So collaboration. So unanimously, the one word we want to share with all of you is let's work all together, collaboration. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you for attending. Yes, once again, I would love to thank all of our partners. They are here sitting on the slides for you to read. Talent Garden has supported as an organizational partner. Thank you to Roche team, Pharma Diagnostic and Diabetes Care, who have collaborated all together to make this event possible. Victor Stavisky, unfortunately, he could not attend today, so greetings to him as well. And thank you all of those who followed the streaming. Thank you so much.